It should be obvious that we cannot solve a crisis with the same methods that got us into it in the first place.
This is a last chance saloon. Because if we don't really take the decisions that are vital now, it's going to be almost impossible to catch up.
We will end the moratorium on extracting our huge reserves of shale, which could get gas flowing as soon as 6 months. We'll give way.
If unprecedented changes are not made and made soon, there will be irreversible damage to the planet.
Zero carbon.
East Talk. Hello and welcome to Zero Carbonista Series 4 Fool's Gold. I'm Ian Collins and this is the UK's #1 environment-based podcast. If it's green, it's in. Another week and a cluster of headlines that should either concern or interest us all, very few of which you will see extensively covered anywhere, which is where we come in. Education is our middle name. Let's speak to our man with the mortarboard and the pointy stick. He is the green entrepreneur and environmentalist Dale Vince. Dale, hello.
Yeah, Ian, how you doing?
Good as gold at this end. Lots going on. You are busy, as we record this, packing your bags.
Yeah, that's right. I'm off home to do that next, actually. Got a fairly early start to London, on my way to Austria to meet the man, Arnie, part of his climate foundation initiative with some kind of charity auction going on. We've made him a signet ring with sky diamonds in it. We've made an identikit one for auction, somebody to be able to buy. Two in the world like it. Yeah, generally, I hope to have a bit of fun. I got a 2-day train trip, plenty of email opportunity, and I'm kind of looking forward to it. Get a beer on the train.
Well, a beer on the train, ready for a soiree with Arnold Schwarzenegger. I mean, there's nothing to not like about this. I mean, if
right.
Thompson's was selling that as a holiday,
everybody
would be queuing up for a bit of that, wouldn't they?
Yeah, my life's all right at times, isn't it? Well, most of the time, I never complain. Actually, it's this will be a bit of fun. It'll eat a couple of days, but it'll be fun and worthwhile, I think.
We will report, of course, next week on how that all went, and we look forward to that. Let's start with this. This is, in fact, it isn't staggering, and it is. It's an Exxon story. Exxon scientists accurately predicted climate change in the 1970s.
Yeah, what a story. So somebody at Harvard did a study of all internal and external Exxon documents that were available. A whole bunch got released a few years ago, I think. And they found that scientists working for Exxon predicted with remarkable accuracy, not just the models and then the subsequent models in terms of the rate of climate change and temperature climb, but they also predicted the actual event itself with remarkable accuracy, up to 80% accurate. So back in the other century, these oil barons knew what they were doing while they were denying that climate change was a thing and that it was man-made and that we needed to do anything about it. Their internal science told them the opposite.
So they actually, that's kind of, I was just trying to picture the boardroom meeting or meetings when they had look, sir, I think you better see this. And they obviously looked at it and then they digested it and then they chucked it in a shredder.
Something like that. So the guy who authored the Harvard study, he described them as two-handed on this topic. I think he meant two-faced because he said they engaged with academia and scientists quite quietly on the one hand and constructively in terms of understanding the science. And then in public, the other face they showed was complete denial of a problem.
It wasn't a bit of denial. It wasn't even as if back then in particular, and even up until quite recently, that they were just sort of toying with the idea of, well, we understand concerns. This was a flat out nothing to see here moment from the oil company.
Yeah, absolutely. And it kind of ties into a story from the other week. We talked about Puerto Rico, a state of the US, using the racketeering laws to take a whole bunch of oil and car companies actually to court to sue them based on them being part of something called the Global Climate Coalition, this nefarious group of oil and car companies that set out to disrupt the COP process, the agreement process for carbon targets. And I happened to be at COP4 in Argentina, and along with Greenpeace, infiltrated an early morning meeting of these guys. And we saw them just carve up the day. They allocated somebody to go to every session everywhere and slow down progress. And we've just reached out to the administration of Puerto Rico and the people leading the legal challenge there to offer to give evidence.
Wow. We shall watch with interest. Here's a question that comes from Nathan, who emailed and says, Dale, I'm a big fan. You've confused me, though. Just heard you talking about your heat pump frustrations on a recent podcast, as I was literally just about to press the button on an air source heat pump. The house is large and EPC A rated, so I think it's right for us. What is the alternative? If not, you promote going green and using fewer fossil fuels, so I can't understand what else to do.
Well, I mean, it's a good question.
You need to sort Nathan out here, Dale.
Yeah. It's like most things in life. It's not actually a kind of simple story here. Heat pumps can be good. So if you've got a well-insulated home, if you've got underfloor heating in particular, they're more suited to that than they are traditional radiators. But you can get low-temperature radiators, which are just bigger, to work better with a heat pump. So heat pumps produce lower temperature water, and they don't work well at all when the air is the coldest, when you need the heat the most. So my heat pump can't keep up when the temperatures drop to less than zero. No, I didn't put it in. I bought the house with it like it. It's a well-insulated home, but the heat pump can't keep up. So there's no simple answer, right? A heat pump might be right for you, and it might not be. The alternative, we think nationally, is a green gas program with gas made from grass, because something like 50% of all homes aren't suitable for a heat pump anyway. And for those that are suitable, it's a fairly big cost. You've got to modify your heating system as well, and it will put your energy bills up by nearly 50% every year. Your whole household energy bills will go up. So it's a bit swings and roundabouts. It can work for some people. It won't work for everybody, and even probably, I dare say, most.
Yeah. So you mentioned, we've talked many times about the grass alternative, but of course it's, at the moment it's not just a theory. We know that it works and you've made some progress there. But of course, to get this rolled out in a bigger way, what's the status of that suggestion?
Well, yeah, this project, our very first gas mill, I thought it was going to go live in February. I've been saying that everywhere, and I've just been told today, no, it's going to slip to March. So I'm going to pin my hat now on the end of March, believing that it can't slip past that. So ultimately, though, in a few weeks' time, this gas mill will be operating, will be putting gas made from grass into the grid in Reading, enough for 3,000 homes every year, and we'll have an event. We'll get politicians and the media to come down and see the proof of this pudding, and hopefully then get some interest in a national program, because it's just crying out to be done. We've done the study with Imperial College. There's enough grass in Britain to make all of the gas that we need, and it could solve so many problems. End our dependence on dodgy regimes for gas. We could permanently lower the price of gas, create 160,000 jobs in the rural economy, and just save billions and billions of pounds a year, and get zero carbon gas, which is a big step towards net zero as a country.
How do you work out who the 3,000 homes are that get it?
Yeah, we don't. We just stuff it in the grid. And we have more than 3,000 customers, right, that are buying the gas. And our job as an energy company is to measure what we put into the grid and measure what our customers take out, and then balance the two things.
So does that mean and you can explain maybe a bit about how the kind of costs work a little, Dale? I won't put you fully on the spot here, because I appreciate this is a wider or a deeper discussion. But if my house is fueled by grass, then surely my energy bill should be about 20 quid a year.
Ultimately, it could be, right? If we do it right as a national program, it could be. There are lots of things that have to change to make that so. These are in the hands of government. So it needs a national focus, not just a building program, but changing the regulations of the game. I talk frequently about that, kind of tipping the playing field back to at least level, if not in favor of renewable energy, through taxes, subsidies, and regulations. It needs that as well to make this gas permanently cheap, as you described it. Maybe not quite 20 quid, but,
Yeah. But if you had what is the situation where, if you can supply cheaper energy in a housing estate, for example, it was divided into two. Are there rules in place that mean, though, that even though you're getting cheaper energy, like people who have renewables at the moment, energy companies will still be charging you lots of money?
No, there's no rules in place really to make that happen. You can be with an energy company that you want, and they all charge slightly different prices, although mostly they're the same now because of the price cap and the energy crisis. There's no real choice. Ultimately, we just need a national energy supply system. That's what I think. We don't need, what have we got now? Maybe 20 different companies, because we lost 30, kind of in a faux competitive market, because there's no competition. It's a kind of nationally run, state run, faux private market. And we don't need that, right? We should just go straight for national ownership. Labour's GB Energy Plan is a lot like that, only focused on what we build next, having that in public ownership. And then we can cut through all of this confusion and crap, quite frankly, about who you buy your energy from and what price you get, because we can all get the same price and the same service and the same energy.
But it does require, doesn't it, an awful lot. I mean, a lot of energy companies will either have to eat humble pie or just completely change the way they work. I mean, if your grass revolution happened, then that would mean that, everybody from British Gas to God knows who else would be scuppered.
Yeah, I mean, they wouldn't be scuppered per se because that gas would be sold into the grid, and a lot of those energy companies don't make stuff; they just buy and sell stuff. So and British Gas do make stuff from the North Sea, unfortunately. But companies like that could just buy it from the wholesale market, so they could still have grass gas and have the price advantage. So there are kind of two different industries, really. There's the generating industry, or in this case, gas making industry, and then there's the retail industry. And it's a question of how joined up they are. We can have them separate, but it's the supply business that I think is all. It's just a dog's dinner right now.
Yeah. Here's an absolute beauty. Peak Meat, Dale. And this also involves a vegan hospital.
11 of them, actually. But this peak meat story is a beauty, as you say. I mean, we've talked about peak oil for a long time. We're going to face peak everythings before very long. But in this case, it's a fantastic story. In Holland, they've found that they're in breach of EU regulations in terms of pollution in waterways and for sensitive landscapes. And they've come up with a really quite brilliant but also bold idea, which is to restrict the number of cows and other animals that can be farmed in Holland, which is just brilliant. And they're going to actually pay farmers just to shut down, which I think is really generous, right? I mean, if you remember the 70s when when Thatcher shut the coal mines in Britain, she didn't pay anybody anything. She just created social devastation. The Dutch are going to pay farmers to stop their emissions, to stop farming animals, and set an absolute limit on the number of animals that can be farmed, and I think reduce that over time. And they're talking about peak meat in these terms and saying that the US has a big challenge as one of the biggest meat producers in the world because the planet just can't sustain the growing amount of meat that's being farmed on it, quite frankly. But within that story was one about 11 New York hospitals that have gone vegan by default on their menus. And so you can still have meat if you ask for it, but 60% of people are taking the vegan option with a 95% satisfaction rate, which I think is amazing. It's a little bit like what FGR did at football, except we only have a vegan option. But when people get to try it, they love it.
I did want, because I saw this story, and I did wonder whether it was because people were being a little more ethical with their choices and they thought, I'm in hospital, so therefore, if ever there was a green light to be healthy, it's right now. Or whether they've just seen the shocking state of what passes for meat in a hospital and thought, this for a game of soldiers, I ain't eating that. Looks like a bat.
Well, that's interesting because somebody involved in this made a great point that actually most of the time people aren't making a choice to eat meat because it's all they're being offered. And it's not actually a choice that maybe a lot of people want. And when you default to vegan and you have to ask for meat, then it flips around completely. Also saying that that's culturally more appropriate as well for the population of New York because plant-based food is a big thing in so many countries and cultures of the world. It's a really interesting story.
This question comes from Claire on Twitter. It says, Dale, are you heading to Davos this week?
Well, I'm going to be nearby, but the old coal-fired chopper won't quite make the trip. So instead, I'm taking the train to see Arnie, which isn't far from Davos, as I understand it. But, I don't think I really fancy it.
Have you been invited to Davos?
No, I haven't. No.
Because this is the World Economic Forum, right?
Yeah, that's right. But, self-described. I mean, I don't know who runs it. I don't know what kind of legitimacy they have. I think you have to be like rich, successful.
I think it's something like the 500 richest companies get. I mean, the World Economic Forum is essentially a lobby group that obviously introduce big business to government as lobby groups do. So they're not alone in that. It's run, unfortunately for him, but fortunately for conspiracy theorists, by a man called Klaus Schwab. And Klaus Schwab, if ever there was a Bond villain waiting to happen, it's dear old Klaus. And of course, the theory goes, because we get lots of calls on this, the World Economic Forum are actually running the world secretly. Yes. And they're just, governments and prime ministers and presidents just do what Klaus asks. It's bollocks, by the way, but yes. I mean, there's certainly some merit in the fact that lobby groups are too close to government.
And there's certainly merit in the idea that there are people influencing governments. I think of Murdoch, for example, the guy with the chewed up walnut looking face. He's the guy that every incoming prime minister in Britain wants to meet to get him on board because of his media clout, because he owns most of the media in Britain. So, the idea of conspiracy theories is not detached from reality. I don't think the WEF, World Economic Forum, are necessarily running the world, but there's no doubt that they've got big clout.
Yeah. Well, I guess, but you could also turn it on its head, couldn't you, and say it would be really weird if the biggest companies in the world didn't meet up and talk.
Well, yeah, you could say that, right? And actually, it'd be weird if government didn't listen to them because...
Well, indeed. I mean, governments don't invent anything. They don't innovate. They don't engineer. They just rely, obviously, on people like yourself, Dale, to come up with ideas and solutions.
As a politician said to me only a couple of months ago, he said, I'm a politician. I don't have ideas.
Well, indeed. I mean, that is the brutal reality is that we have this kind of slightly false sense of that is what a government's going to do for us, that they're going to solve all these problems. But actually, when you think about it, I mean, they don't really solve anything. They cobble together a sort of loose roadmap of how life is meant to rub along. But in terms of making stuff happen, it's us lot that do that.
Well, if you look at our experience the last 13 years of Tory rule in Britain, then I have to say you're absolutely right. Nothing has happened. We've gone backwards on so many things. We're opening coal mines now, like, it's the start of the Industrial Revolution, the old one.
So we can say you're not off to Davos then?
Yeah, not Davos. I'm off to see Arnie, innit, right? And it was going to be much more fun.
It was either Klaus or Arnie.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be, Arnie it's a no-brainer, simple as that. The United States backs appointment of UAE oil chief to oversee COP28.
Yes.
Now, when I saw this headline, I thought, well, it's obviously a joke. But it isn't.
I'm just laughing at your naivety. My bad.
No, but there's nothing wrong with that. So what's going on here?
Well... So the guy that runs the state oil company there has been appointed as like the leader of COP28, which is an important role. And environmentalists are up in arms. They're saying things like it's like giving an arms dealer the leading role in peace talks, right?
Yeah.
Do they want peace? Probably not. And John Kerry has kind of jumped in and said, no, it's going to be okay because like this big oil company is important and actually they're transitioning to renewables and it'll be all right, basically. The spotlight will be on them and it'll be all right. But activists are fearing that nothing will get done. A little bit like in Egypt when even with the backing of countries like the US and India, it wasn't possible to get an end of oil and coal on the outcome of the climate talks. So they're just... afraid of that, and John Kerry's saying, "Now, be all right, Gov. What are you going to do?"
So he's kind of like the Alec Sharma of the piece for this one.
That's right. He'll be the leader.
I mean, I get it. Look, I can understand why there might be people like him at COP28 because you need that kind of engagement in order to make change. I see that, but to be running the darn thing. Someone's taking the piss, aren't they?
I think you're probably right. It's normally a job reserved for diplomats and that kind of person because it's a very difficult job to balance the arguments of everybody. I mean, if you go back to COP4 when the Global Climate Coalition were at work, doing their kind of behind the scenes stuff, this might have been stuff of their wildest dreams that one of them, the boss of a big oil company, could actually, run the show. I bet they didn't even dream of that.
Curious. One here from Hannah on LinkedIn who says, are you still buying gas from Gazprom? Have you managed to dump them yet? Give us the background to the question first, Dale.
Well, I think the background to this is the invasion of Ukraine by Russia last February. A lot of hoo-ha about sanctions and stuff like that. One of those was about Gazprom. I think 4% of Britain's gas came from Russia from that company. It was 40% for Europe, so they had a bigger problem. And I think it was one of the things a lot of people said while trying to boycott everything Russian. We had some contracts with Gazprom. If we'd have broken them, we'd have paid them millions of pounds, which surely wasn't the objective. The objective was not to help them. And so we said we'd let them run out, and that's what's happening.
Here's a question from Andy on Twitter, who says, more of a comment than a question, Dale. Just finished Manifesto on Audible. Absolutely magnificent, profound and inspiring. You might be the hero we wanted. In fact, you're the hero we need.
Wow.
Well, there's some smoke blown right there, Dale.
Yeah, what can I say? What an amazing bunch of things to say. Thank you very much is all I can really say.
Thank you for that.
Andy.
Christopher on Facebook, how long till Farage and crew wake up to the financial benefits of net zero? How often have you and I talked about this, Dale? That, even if you are just a massively capitalist right-wing Tory, embrace this stuff because there's good business sense in this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a great question, and I've spent some time on these right-wing shows. I was with Farage about a week ago, and I remember saying to people afterwards, "I think the guy's persuadable. I think he's got the interests of the country at heart. He might not always be right in other people's eyes, like Brexit. He thought it was going to be good for us, and obviously it's been anything but. But if we can get him to understand that energy independence is a thing that we can do, he thinks we don't have enough wind and sun." Which we do. And then he thinks that the grid can't take it 100%, which it can. And this is what I talk to him every time I go on the air with him. If we can persuade him that it's doable and that it's much better for us economically, then I think we can get people like him on board. And that's the guy, he's got an audience that we need to persuade. So I think, it's worth doing. And I do believe it's actually possible because he ended his interview last week with me by saying, look, I'm a bit skeptical about renewable energy, but if it gives us cheap energy, then I'm for it. So, I mean, there's an open door there.
Yeah. He then gave you a big hug and said, I love you, Dale.
Something like that.
Added that.
Let's have a beer sometime or something.
And just a final point, Dale, the Good Law Project. You're off to the courthouse.
Yes, we are. I think it's off to the Supreme Court. We are attempting to overturn a decision in a case that's been rumbling on for quite a while. A farmer on the River Wye has got permission for a shed for 200 cows or something, but has already said he wants to stick 5,000 pigs in there. And he got permission, I think, on appeal. I'm not really sure, but we are challenging the decision of the inspector. And I think the decision of a lower court as well, that it's okay. And we've got two reasons for that. One is they failed to take in the cumulative impact. So this one shed on its own, they looked at that and said, yeah, the River Wye can take that, which is a dumb thing to do, right? We all know that cumulative impact is a real thing. But the second is the precautionary principle. And this is the one we really want to win because as of yet, that doesn't feature in planning consents for things like industrial animal farms. But if it did, we think we wouldn't have any new ones now. So we're hoping to win that argument at the Supreme Court.
And when are you there?
Well, it started now. We started last week.
Okay.
So I think it won't be long. I mean, I'm not an expert in the process, but because the case has been running for a couple of years, we're just at the point now where we had probably a couple of weeks to intervene and seek to overturn the decision of the lower court. And we're doing that now.
Got it. That's it for this episode. Dale, have a cracking time in Austria. Say hello to Arnie for us, won't you?
I'm going to. Absolutely going to. I might challenge him to an arm wrestle just for a joke, but I'm not sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. We need to get him on the podcast as well, don't forget. So.
Yeah, I'm hoping to get a quote from him to bring back with me for next week's episode.
Some people bring back a stick of rock. We bring back a
piece of Arnie. Yeah.
We hope. Have a cracking trip, Dale.
Yeah, thanks, Ian.
Don't forget, of course, to follow this podcast from your podcast provider so that you get each new episode automatically. Leave a review there too. And if you want to get in touch, you can email your comments and questions to zerocarbonista@ecotricity.co.uk. Really important bit as well. Follow Dale on social media, twitter.com/DaleVince, facebook.com/DaleVince, and all over Instagram and TikTok too.
Zero Carbon
East of.